Hey builders, Mark coming at you with another Retro Reacts. In this one, we're going to take a look at how Capital One approached AWS policy enforcement with what was at the time in 2017 a relatively new project called Cloud Custodian. Of course, this is blown up to be one of the preeminent ways to enforce policy on AWS. Phenomenal open source project that's got a life of its own. Let's see how they first introduced it in This Is My Architecture video from way back in 2017. So we've still got the retro opening here because we're in still the first batch. Let's see who's up from Capital One.
Welcome to This Is My Architecture. This time we're joined by Kapil from Capital One. Welcome, Kapil.
Hi, happy to be here.
Perfect. So we've got Kapil, the Director of Engineering, and Simon is back from the Australia-New Zealand section. And let's see what they're going to introduce for us. If you're familiar with Cloud Custodian, it's going to be a look back into the past, a little blast from the past. If you're new to it, this is probably a really great entry point because the project was a little bit simpler back then. Kapil, one of the absolute key people in getting this out into the community, contributing it, and making sure that everybody could take advantage of this phenomenal tool.
What does Capital One do?
Capital One is a leading financial institution.
And I'm guessing you build a fair bit of software.
Absolutely.
And you use the cloud quite a lot.
Absolutely.
And everyone does exactly what they're supposed to do from a policy perspective. No one ever makes a mistake.
So a little bit of the intro here. Obviously, Capital One is a huge proponent of AWS. They've been a big sponsor for years at reInvent. Kapil obviously focused on the engineering side with the very simple and direct answers as opposed to somebody who's in biz dev or marketing who'd give you a little more flair. Straight to the point. You know, hey, we're a financial services company. We do a ton of work in the cloud. And let's hear what he says about policy enforcement and people following along with the rules that have been set out.
Quite so much. We like to get there, and we try to help our developers do that using.
So right off the bat, I really like that as far as, you know, hey, people make mistakes, but we try to help people get there as opposed to most people's traditional approach to policies like you must do this, which is absolutely correct in a policy language. But if you're forcing people to comply, it can be really hard. Educating them to understand why something's in place is a much better approach. So let's see what Kapil has to say.
Tools like Cloud Custodian.
So I'm seeing some pretty nifty YAML here. What is Cloud Custodian?
Nobody has ever said pretty nifty YAML. That's just no.
So Cloud Custodian is a rules engine that we use to do sort of account fleet level management of across all these different apps that might be living in an account. It is this YAML DSL, and
so DSL is a domain-specific language. So essentially what Cloud Custodian is a way to describe what you want to happen in a relatively easy set of syntax, unfortunately in YAML, and then the tool will enforce that. So you can describe it in easier terms than just straight IAM policies, and then it will be enforced. So it's a little bit smoother way because it is a domain-specific language, or a DSL.
We look at it, we break it down. One of these YAML policies runs against a particular resource type in AWS. This one is running against EC2, and we have support about 70 different resources and services in AWS. If we go through it, then it'll actually query out all the instances in your account and then apply some of these filters client side on it. In this case, we're looking to make sure that our instance is tagged with these two required tags, and if it's not, then we say we'll go ahead and stop it.
So right off the bat, this is a really great example. I like this example as the start as far as enforcing tags on resources. I wish we could do this at the AWS level. This is a great way of doing it, is saying, hey, everything needs to be tagged. I don't care what it's tagged within these particular values, but these names need to be present so that we can ensure that we understand who owns what.
So the key aspect is that we're able to break out these actions and these filters into small functional bits that can be reused across lots of different policies. And we have hundreds of actions and hundreds of filters.
Wow.
So that's a key point Kapil is mentioning here, is that this allows you to break down policy to say, hey, we are going to have this require tag chunk, and you can reuse it in multiple policies to make your life easier.
Calling the API in real time to understand what the state is and taking action to correct within policy.
Absolutely. We're also intelligent about how we query. So like we might have 100 policies for EC2. So we'll query EC2 once and run through all those policies straight out of the cache.
So you're not going query policy, query policy?
No.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're very sensitive to dealing with rate limits and large accounts and lots of different consumers. So We want to make sure that we're not impacting the quality of service of the account and that people are able to be productive.
So calling that out is really, really important. Most people would say, yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it. Yet you would be surprised at how many people don't do that, just because it's so simple to ping AWS and get a response back. But as you scale up, especially at Capital One scale, even back then in 2017, you quickly start to hit rate limits. You quickly start to throttle things, potentially adding up costs depending on what you're querying. So it's really smart to have that, like, hey, we're going to query it once, we're going to get the data and realize that we can ask a bunch of questions from that one query of the API to keep that application, in this case Cloud Custodian, really performant.
Yeah, managing stuff at scale, nothing could possibly go wrong at scale when you're doing things in an automatic fashion.
No, definitely. Tools that operate en masse need careful care and attention. We try to do that by a couple different techniques. One, adhering to software engineering principles, like 400 plus unit tests, 85% code coverage, and then we actually built it into the tool itself to support a couple different things that we use. One is that we actually will validate config files using JSON schema. So if someone has a typo in their policy, rather than even trying to take an action on it, we will fail it on validation. And
Smart. And that's really one of the key features why Cloud Custodian has been so popular and so successful, is that as you feed it these policies, it immediately checks it as a first step. Before it even goes and looks at your environment, it says, wait a minute, is this a valid policy? And the error messages are really well written in that it will tell you what's wrong. Like, no, this is not formatted properly. This breaks YAML rules. This doesn't make any sense, that kind of thing, so that it gives you that feedback right away so that you're not applying a broken policy to resources and then trying to act on something that you never intended in the first place.
That into our CI systems and our infrastructure as code, where we treat these policies, check them into Git, and do code reviews and CI on them.
It's a beautiful thing.
The other thing we do as part of our CI, as well as just for command line usage, is that when you actually go to run a policy, you can type in this dry run option, in which
Gotta love dry run. So dry run is exactly what it says, is that it's going to run through everything and tell you what would have happened, but not actually take any actions. So specifically for something like this example policy Kapil has up, which is it will stop an instance if it's not tagged, you might not want to actually do that. That could be a critical instance. So knowing what you're actually going to impact, like if you have 80% of your instances don't have tags, stopping 80% of your production deployment is probably going to be a bad thing. So dry run is very handy. It's in most, if not all, the AWS CLI at this point as well.
you'll basically just drop your actions and you'll see what you'll actually match just on the resources that you want.
So see what you would have done.
You'll see what you'll act on.
But it didn't actually happen.
It didn't do anything for you. It's letting you know what it sees.
Now, if I did do something, would it audit my activities?
It in and of itself wouldn't necessarily do an audit of activities per se. All the API calls, of course, go into CloudTrail. And Custodian itself, when you do a run, has an option for an output directory, which we highly recommend people do into S3. And so any resource that matches a policy will automatically have its full resource description dropped into S3 as your audit trail of the things that you have touched.
Good on Simon to use the icons that they have as magnets. Often in these videos, they sit there unused. But a great example of functionality here where because the Custodian can take actions, and those actions will show up in CloudTrail, Custodian has more context. It's saying why it took those actions. And when you use that -S to dump it into an S3 bucket or somewhere else, what you're going to get is actually, okay, I took an action on this EC2 resource based on this policy, so that when you go back and audit it, you actually understand why that action was taken, not just what was done.
On top of that, we also output into Cloudwatch Metrics. So you're able to see how many of these things are actually, how many instances in this case are missing the right tags, and then you can use Cloudwatch dashboards to create a custom dashboard on top of it.
And that's one of the keys for a really successful tool, is that Custodian does a great job of kind of weaving in and filling in the blanks for AWS services. So outputting into Cloudwatch Metrics allows, as Kapil mentioned, you to then build a Cloudwatch dashboard, or you could even dump those metrics and use QuickSight to build something more complicated if you wanted to. But the idea here is don't reinvent the wheel. There's already great ways to keep track of metrics. Why not feed into an existing system?
So you can constantly see what's going on in your environment in real time with reporting and auditability as well.
Yes, and the real-time aspects come in from the fact that these policies can actually be run inside of Lambda. So Custodian actually bakes in a
third icon. Love it.
A serverless provisioning framework. And if you just type a mode and let's run this policy on.
So remember, this is 2017. So they built Cloud Custodian with the ability to go deliver itself serverlessly in 2017.
It's how we launch a new instance. So we'll say type CloudTrail, and the events that we care about are run instances. So now, anytime somebody launches an instance in this account, Custodian will actually validate all this stuff and take its actions. And so when we go to actually do the
Very
run
cool.
command, what actually happens in this case is that we'll actually create a new Lambda, provision it, create a Cloudwatch rule, create a Cloudwatch target, hook it all up for you. And then...
So again, 2017, this was all done automatically in 2017. This is why this tool has been so successful.
Yeah, and the metrics that come out of that are actually the real metrics as far as what actually match. So in addition to your standard Lambda metrics, you'll continue to see the same metrics come out about the number of instances that actually match that policy.
Fantastic. So this sounds super extensible, super powerful, and also kind of, allowing you to have a lot of repeatability because you are storing the policies in source control as well.
Absolutely.
And so open sourced?
Yes, as well. We're open source at github.com/capital1/cloud-custodian.
Fantastic. So Cloud Custodian is what you're looking for. So we've got here a policy management system, source control, operating at scale real time. This is super powerful stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Enjoy using it.
Absolutely. We've got hundreds of users internally.
Fantastic, and it's open.
So hundreds of users internally in 2017. That's expanded at Capital One, but this has gone across the entire AWS community at this point.
As well, so that community keeps growing. Thank you, Kapil, so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, now that was a really good one. That was different than what we've normally done. Normally, we've actually reviewed architectures. This one isn't so much of an architecture as an architecture checker. But the interesting thing here is, what would you improve? I would improve nothing really, because the tool has grown over time. This was a glimpse at the early days of Cloud Custodian when it was just starting out as a public project. It had incubated within Capital One for a couple of years, and then Kapil and the team released it out. It's gone like wildfire since. Some of the functionality has actually been integrated into core AWS services. The rest of the project has grown to be extremely usable, highly valuable, really simple to get out there. Of course, there are other tools that are looking at some of the stuff that Custodian does as well. But if you haven't checked it out, you absolutely should check out this project and see the value it can provide, especially in that serverless mode, for that sort of constant validation of what you want to be doing to make sure that things that you build within the AWS cloud are lining up with your expectations. We'll see you in the next one.